Hello YouTube, Mr. Magz here, and back in 2015, Nintendo wasn't really doing all that well. The Wii U was there, it wasn't selling all that great, although the games that were coming out were, they were selling pretty well, and the 3DS was, kept chugging along. It was doing okay. Amiibo sales were still okay, but overall sales of Nintendo were down, and it was just not really looking the best for the company as a whole. And there were a lot of articles and just people discussing the idea of a company like Disney buying them out. And that happened pretty much throughout the entire generation of the Wii U, how people saying, oh, Nintendo is doomed, Nintendo is failing, they need to change something, they need to be bought in order to be saved. And then the Switch was announced and released, and I haven't really heard anyone talk about that at all, like, in the past year or so. So, there's that. But then yesterday, I saw this article, Why Disney Should Buy Nintendo. And the weird thing about this article is that it focuses so much on the idea that Disney needs Nintendo to survive, and not the other way around like a lot of other discussions on this topic do. Which is really confusing, because I can understand to an extent the idea that Disney buying Nintendo would be good for Nintendo. But just the idea that Disney needs Nintendo in order to survive, like this article is suggesting, just seems a bit weird to me. And I'll read the article and you might see where I'm coming from. Disney has come under siege over the past couple of years, due in large part to worries about ESPN and its future. Hold up. You're going to tell me that this entire article is focused solely off the idea that one of Disney's companies, ESPN, isn't doing all that great. Therefore, Disney needs to do some drastic change. Did they just forget the fact that Disney bought Star Wars and Marvel and owns ABC Family, or ABC, the entire network? Or makes movies and also owns Pixar? I don't really feel like one of their brands, dipping over the past couple of years, I don't really feel like that's really putting that big of a dent in their bottom line. I could be wrong, of course. I very well could be wrong about that. I just don't feel like it's that big of a deal just for one of their brands to be on the downhill. But I'll continue. There are no shortage of opinions out there on what Disney should do with ESPN, which has lost nearly 10 million subscribers over the past 2 years. Now, granted, that is quite a lot. Although, I meant to look this up earlier, but whatever. I'm assuming that ESPN still has a bunch of subscribers, and 10 million, yes, it is a lot, but I have a feeling like it's not as... I don't feel like it's like a super large percent, maybe. I think it would be less than 10% of their audience, which I'll continue. Liberty Global chiefman and media giant John Malone has posited that Disney could spin off ESPN. After doing so, Disney would be a more palatable purchase for a tech giant like Amazon, Apple, or whomever decides they need the House of Mouse on their bottom line, on their balance sheet. Okay. Did I read that right? Did that sentence just say that if Disney got rid of ESPN, they would look better for a buyout from Apple or Amazon? What? Huh? Unless I'm just reading that wrong, but it clearly looks like this guy is trying to say that Disney is the one who's going to get bought out, and not the other way around. Huh? I don't understand. and I'm not even to the stupid Nintendo part yet. This is just weird. Like, Disney is one of the, if not the biggest companies in existence. They've been around for nearly 100 years, if not more. So, unless I'm just reading this wrong, this guy is trying to tell me that Apple is planning on buying Disney? Now, granted, Apple is a huge business. I'll give them that. Both Apple and Amazon do not have the capability to even come close to matching Disney's just anything, really. Like, Disney is a staple in pop culture and has been, like I said, for nearly 100 years now. So, I don't... And even if it is the other way, let's just say that this guy is trying to say that, let's say they sell ESPN, and then Disney would be poised to buying out Amazon or Apple. I don't... That just seems like a weird jump in logic. Like, why exactly does Disney need to buy another company like Apple or Amazon when they're already riding high on all the movie stuff they're doing, all the Pixar stuff, all the Star Wars and Marvel stuff? I just don't understand. I just don't get what that sentence is trying to say, so I'll just continue. Others have suggested that ESPN needs to keep laying off talented journalists and reporters to keep from crumbling under the weight of the enormous television rights contracts it has recently signed with the major sports leagues. Disney CEO Bob Iger, I think it's Iger? I'll just stick with Bob Iger, has talked constantly about the upcoming direct-to-consumer service as a way to keep sports fans engaged without the weight of the enormous cable bill. BTIG analyst Rich Greenfield, a promoted media analysis and noted Disney critic, has recently suggested Disney should buy Twitter to help with ESPN. Again, I'm not really sure if Disney needs to do that. Why is this article so focused on ESPN, one brand Disney owns, when I already said they have all these other super successful brands? Now, granted, it is always nice to try to make as much money as you can, and sure, trying to get back the lost subscribers that ESPN did lose would definitely be helpful. But I don't feel like Disney should focus so much on this one failing brand if it is that big of a failing brand that this article is trying to say. If it is as big of a failing brand as it is, I don't really feel a need for Disney to want to keep it. If I was Disney, I personally would feel like trimming the fat wouldn't necessarily be the worst idea. I could be wrong, but I don't feel like buying Twitter to help ESPN. I don't even know if that really makes sense. I mean, I see ESPN stuff trending on Twitter all the time anyway, so I don't really know if buying Twitter, I don't really know how exactly that would help, but whatever, I'll just continue. Greenfield has other suggestions for Disney, including that it should buy video game publishers EA or Activision. Again, that just kind of feels like a weird jump in logic. You're focusing so hard on the fact that one brand is not doing all that well. Again, when Disney owns all the other super successful ones. Why is ESPN going down kind of such a big deal? Unless I'm just not seeing the same things they are, but I don't know. And also, EA and Activision, they're the top two Western developers. They're worth tens of billions of dollars, maybe even $100 million each, $100 billion each. especially if you include Blizzard in with Activision. So I don't really know if it'll be worth it. I don't know. Now we get into the stupid Nintendo part of this article. While interesting, acquiring a video game publisher is wrong for Disney. It doesn't just need a video game publisher, it needs Nintendo. Again, with the idea that Disney needs something like this. Disney doesn't need any help, really. They're a multi-billion, maybe even trillion-dollar business. I meant to look up their net worth too, but like, they're one of the most successful businesses of all time. I don't really understand why there's this idea that Disney is going down the gutter simply because of one of their brands is not doing all that well. It's just weird. Saying that Disney needs Nintendo in order to be successful, that's just weird. Again, unless I'm just not seeing it the way this guy is, but I don't know. I'll continue now. Nintendo is undergoing a renaissance of sorts for a number of reasons. While investors are focusing on the early success of the Nintendo Switch, the remarkable performance of its now discontinued Nintendo Classic, the staying power of Pokemon Go, Nintendo owns the stake of the Pokemon Company, and I think they get 30% of the income from Pokemon Go. I think it's 30% on Nintendo, 30% Game Freak, 30% Niantic, and then 10% Apple or Android store. So yeah, they're still getting a pretty significant chunk from the game itself. And its increasing strength in mobile games are all helping Nintendo boost appeal. You're not wrong. Nintendo, especially since the Wii U failure, it definitely does seem that Nintendo is back in the groove of things like they used to be. Acquiring Nintendo, which admittedly would not be easy, would give Disney more than just a video game publisher. It would give it another intellectual property brand at a time where there is little original intellectual property being created. I mean, again, I guess you're not wrong, but at the same time, why not? I feel like if you're focusing on wanting Disney to have more IPs to work with, why not buy like another comic book a company like the guys who make Archie or something like that, or some other movie studio? Especially since Nintendo is worth over $40 billion. That's a lot of money. And it's not like buying Nintendo will be something completely different than buying Marvel or Star Wars. Those were companies, per se. Those were companies. But they were not corporations like Nintendo is. They were not those. Disney bought both Marvel and Star Wars both for $4 billion each. I don't think Disney is really in the market for purchasing something 10 times that amount. Right? That just doesn't really make sense to me. I don't really feel like putting down that much money. Maybe they can negotiate it down to $20 billion, but that's still a lot of money. I just don't feel like it will be worth it for Disney to do that, especially in a time where they're not really in trouble. If Disney was like clearly on a downhill slope, which they're not, especially since their movies, Pixar, Star Wars is coming back. Come back strong. Marvel is still doing their thing really well. They're making bank right now on all these properties. If they weren't doing that, if they saw that they were going down and they wanted to just like do one more Hail Mary, like just attempt at something, and just hope that that buying Nintendo would help them, then sure, that's something. But I don't really feel like buying Nintendo right now would be worth it for them. And also, all these other people last year or the year before who were trying to say that Disney buying Nintendo would be good for Nintendo, they're not really taking a couple things into account. They're not really thinking about, yes, potentially buying Nintendo or Disney buying Nintendo would allow Nintendo to have more more staff to work with. But assuming Disney does buy them for the full amount of the $40 billion, at that point, I just don't know if they would be able to really sustain that. And also, I feel like ideologically, Nintendo would change as a company, because 2 or B, whichever numbering scale is worth, Disney is the American company. They've been there in the American mainstream since the 20s, if I'm not mistaken. And Nintendo is one of the, if not the primary Japanese mainstream company. They've been in the mainstream of Japanese culture. I mean, they've been around since 1889, and they've really been in the mind of the gamer, and even just overall mainstream since the late 70s. So ideologically, these two companies are very, very different. And Japanese companies, their ideals are very, very strict, especially a company as Japanese as Nintendo. Japanese companies generally don't like having intervention from American industry. They like doing their own thing. They appreciate as little involvement from American culture as possible. There are I think I read one time that there's this law that I don't know if it's by company or if it's nationally, but there's some law in place that if an American company wanted to buy a Japanese company, it's basically impossible. There's so many hoops they would have to jump through. There's essentially no point in even trying it. And I'm almost positive that that rule applies to Nintendo. So even if Disney wanted to, even if they had the money available to do it, I just don't feel like it'd be worth it to go through all of that just to acquire a company they don't need. Buy a smaller brand that can, just help your bottom line if ESP is taking you down that far. But at that point, why not just sell it off? I don't feel like Disney needs to buy Nintendo. Whatever. Characters like Mario, Luigi, Zelda, Donkey Kong, and countless others are known around the world and have been for decades. The reason I emphasize Zelda there is because I guarantee this guy is not a gamer. He might know the names of a couple of games here and there. Everyone knows who Mario, Luigi, and Donkey Kong are. Everyone knows that. If you don't, what's wrong with you? I guarantee of a green elf of an elf in that green tunic and hat, he would call that guy Zelda. I almost guarantee it. Because he would know that the main character of the Legend of Zelda games is Link. He wouldn't know that. And the fact that he puts Zelda here and not Link is very telling of that. I don't know. Disney has become an acquirer of valuable intellectual property that can be exploited in countless ways. Parks, cartoons, merchandise, movies, and more. Outside the Lego company, and maybe Ravio's Angry Birds franchise, there are not many companies and brands out there that resonate with people of all ages the way Nintendo does. Granted, that is true. I mean, the other one being Disney, of course. But now that you bring up Lego, I honestly feel like acquiring Lego might be a better, if they were in the market to buy a large company, Lego might actually be the better option. Now I don't know if Warner Brothers, like, what kind of involvement they have in the Lego company as a whole, because I know I think they publish the Lego video games for the most part, and also they make the Lego movies. So I don't know if Disney would have to go through Warner Brothers, at least somewhat, in order to acquire Lego, but if they didn't, then that'd be perfect. Disney has been pretty good at allowing like their companies to basically do whatever they want, even after they acquire them. And Lego and Disney already seem to kind of have a pretty good relationship. Star Wars and Marvel Lego sets have been around for forever, and they've been even more relevant now that the movies are coming out, made or at least published by Nintendo, by Disney. So buying a company like Lego and allowing them to do their own thing, but also make box sets for Disney characters, would be a much better thing for them than Nintendo. Sorry, than buying Nintendo. I just feel like you jumped the gun a bit, and especially since I don't think Lego is worth $40 billion. It very well could be. I don't know, but I might just be underestimating it. But still, I feel like it would be a much easier acquisition, for one, since it is another American or at least Western company, and two, it'd just be more worth it, since toy companies, well, technically Nintendo is a toy company, since that's how they started off, and consoles could be considered toys, but just what Lego makes, I feel like, would be better suited for a company like Disney. Nintendo is finally starting to realize this, leveraging its characters for theme parks, which, by the way, they're leveraging their characters for theme parks in Universal Studios. And even though Disney owns Marvel, they still can't make any rides that feature characters from the Marvel universe that are already featured in Universal Studios, which I find kind of funny. Like, they can't make a Hulk ride, they can't make a Spider-Man ride, as far as I know, or any X-Men characters or anything like that. I think they could get away with Guardians of the Galaxy, maybe Thor. I've only been to Universal one time, and I don't really was there. I definitely remember the Spider-Man, Hulk, and X-Men stuff that was there. But so yeah, they can't do that. So assuming Disney were to buy Nintendo after Nintendo already had their theme park ready at Universal, Disney wouldn't, assuming that the contract is like as strict as it is with the Marvel contract with Universal, Disney wouldn't be able to capitalize on the Nintendo characters because Universal already has that on lock. Plus, are you gonna try to get Universal to tear down the park that's already there, or just move it over to Disney? That just doesn't really seem to work in my brain, but whatever. When Disney acquired Lucasfilms and Marvel, Iger and team talked about how they could leverage Darth Vader and Spider-Man to be in theme parks, as well as on the silver screen. Adding Mario and friends to that stable would only enhance and strengthen Disney, while simultaneously hurting one of its main competitors in the theme park business, Universal. Again, I don't really feel like this guy knows just how ruthless the theme park industry is. Because, like I said, I honestly don't know if Spider-Man can be used in a Disney theme park. I think they're making a Guardians of the Galaxy ride to take place of one of the older, in Disneyland, I think, the Haunted Mansion, or the, crap, what is it called? Tower of Terror. Yeah, I think the Tower of Terror is kind of broken, so they're turning that into a garden because that wasn't one of the IPs that Universal used in their theme park. And yeah, I don't think Universal, since they have Nintendo characters in their park, I don't think they would just allow Disney to also make Nintendo themed rides. That just doesn't really make sense to me. I don't know. Nintendo would also help strengthen Disney's place in licensed merchandise, which would have become a huge opportunity from the Burbank Calif-based company. Star Wars-related toys and other items helped boost licensed merchandise revenues in 2016 to $262.9 billion, according to the International Licensing Industry Merchandisers Association. But Pokemon saw a resurgence in licensing merchandise as well, thanks to Pokemon Go. Adding to its coffers would be a boon for Disney. I have no idea what I just said for the last sentence, but I'm assuming it means like adding Pokemon stuff to Disney would help them, essentially. And granted, yes, it would. But another thing that I feel like this guy isn't really thinking about is the idea that video game companies already have a lot of stake in other companies, like Game Freak being a second-party company to Nintendo. They don't own Game Freak. Game Freak can make whatever they want. They made that Tempo the Elephant game for PlayStation 2014 or 15. So Game Freak isn't like tied down to Nintendo. But Nintendo does publish the Pokemon games because Nintendo, I think they own a majority share in the Pokemon Company, which Game Freak essentially kind of owns, but not really. So, essentially, that Nintendo and Game Freak and the Pokemon Company right now have an agreement going. There is a chance that if Disney were to buy Nintendo, Game Freak might not like that and back out of the agreement. It's fully possible that could happen. I can't think of any time that has happened before, but since Game Freak and Pokemon Company are pretty much just as Japanese as Nintendo is, if they saw that Nintendo was being influenced by a huge Western influence, I don't feel like they would want to continue doing business with them, or at least as strongly as they do now. So I don't. And also all the other second-party studios that they are working with, I just feel like it's just a much bigger endeavor than this guy is trying to make it seem. Nintendo has also talked about putting its characters in other venues, including movies. The silver screen would be a holy grail for Nintendo, which needs to think of itself as not just a video game publisher, but as an entertainment company. Putting designs on Uniqlo t-shirts is one thing, but getting Mario and friends up on the big screen is a whole different story. I am honestly kind of surprised they haven't done more movies already. Now, they're going to talk about the Super Mario Bros. Movie that happened. Oh my gosh. But, like, after the 90s, they just kind of didn't do anything with that. They haven't made any more TV shows, no movies, no even, like, direct-to-DVD movies or anything. It's kind of weird that they just stopped making Nintendo-themed shows and stuff like that. I don't know. They seem to be pretty successful. Like, the Zelda and Mario shows that were coming out, well, they weren't good, but like they were there and they're now like pop culture icons. So I don't know. The company rightfully has reservations about how it handles its move to the big screen after the disastrous Super Mario Bros. Movie. But if there is any company that has shown a willingness to take beloved franchises and expand them in an appealing way to both critics and fans, it's Disney. Disney very easily could, like, get a good director and get it, like, basically do the movie themselves and then just have Nintendo kind of overseeing it, maybe. Because, again, Nintendo is very, very strict on how they want their characters to be portrayed. I'm honestly surprised they allowed the Mario Rabbids crossover. Which, like, that game, I'm not going to judge it right now. I haven't seen a trailer. I haven't like seen anything out of it outside of those first images. But it definitely is weird to see the Rabbids and Mario together. I'm kind of surprised Nintendo allowed that to happen. Under Iger, Disney has become the king of nostalgia. Nintendo has built its business on nostalgia, a phenomenon that is actually backed up by science and explained by neuroscientists. Acquiring Nintendo would give Disney a lock on nostalgia in a way that acquiring EA or Activision simply would not. And I don't know. I kind of get where you're coming from to an extent. Just the idea that it might, in a way, be good for Nintendo to have like a big company like Disney fund them. The main issue I have with this article is I don't feel like this guy understands the grand scope of just how Japanese companies, especially Nintendo, works. And two, I feel like he's blowing up the idea that Disney needs a company like Nintendo to basically survive when they just don't. There's nothing about Disney right now outside of ESPN, it seems, that's really tanking. Their movie industry is really booming. Merchandise is up. The video games they do put out seem to be doing pretty well. Just licensing, just licenses. The Disney Princess line, Star Wars, Marvel, Pixar as a whole. I just don't feel like Disney needs something like Nintendo right now. And I don't feel like Nintendo needs something like Disney right now. Again, if this was back in 2015 when Nintendo wasn't doing all that well, then sure, I could understand the argument that Disney would be good for Nintendo. But especially right now when their stock value nearly doubled once the Nintendo Switch came out. Because back when once the Pokemon Go stuff settled, I think it was like around $23 billion overall. And now it's up to over $40 billion. So just by the time from last August till now, it's nearly doubled. So yeah, I don't feel like Disney and Nintendo, I don't feel like they need each other to really... I don't know. I've rambled on about this too much. If you in the comment section feels that either of these companies need each other to survive, please let me know. And I would also want to agree with this article a bit more if it did research in what all Nintendo is, because again, I guarantee that this guy doesn't know who Zelda actually is. And two, just how Japanese companies work. So, yeah, leave the comments down below if you have any opinions about this article, and I'll see you next time.